Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the view from the opposition, and this week it comes from Ashley Preece, who covers Aston Villa home and away for our sister paper down in Birmingham. Ashley, thank you very much for popping onto the pod. A familiar voice for those who've been listening over the last couple of years. How are you doing?
Yeah, my dulcet Brummy tones. I'm sure the Chronicle listeners will remember me. All's well. As we're recording this, Andrew, it hasn't been a week yet since Steven Gerrard sacking, so it's been a crazy old week. Unai Emery's down at Villa now. I'm sure Newcastle fans remember what happened there last year, or supposedly. So yeah, new manager's at the helm. He'll start work after the Newcastle game. So we've got the caretaker in charge on Saturday. Aaron Danks did pretty well last week against Brentford. 3-0 up inside 14 minutes. And yeah, the players played with weight off the shoulders. Clearly something was not right amongst the Gerrard and in the dressing room there. So all was not well. And yeah, I'd have said it was lambs to the slaughter. They're going up there at St James's this weekend. But off the back of last week, there's a bit of hope. So there's a bit of hope for me driving the 3.5 hours up to St James's. So let's see what happens.
I mean, that was the first question I was going to put to you. If someone had said this would be the situation after 12 games and they'd said this to you at the start of the season, Gerrard would be out. Villa would only have 12 points. You know, the football wasn't great and you'd be having a new manager in charge. What would you have said in the summer to those people?
What about Newcastle fourth as well? I wouldn't have said that either. I wouldn't. Yeah, would never envisage this at all, especially with the signings they made Villa. They beat Champions League clubs to Boubacar Kamara, to Diego Carlos, and they were the players to strengthen Villa's core, that spine, and they seem the key additions. And for them to be injured, just all fell into one. Gerrard's future, obviously, no more, and yeah, it just all turned pretty badly, pretty quick. And it all happened on the opening day of the season, Andrew, down at Bournemouth, newly promoted Bournemouth. Villa rocked up there. They got absolutely battered, and the alarm bells were ringing then on the opening day. So it's all spiraled since then. And obviously it's led with Gerrard sacking last week. So, yeah, all's not been well down at Villa. And it stemmed from the opening day. It stemmed from some of the injuries Gerrard had. And Gerrard's been found out. Obviously, he lost Michael Beale back in May. Look at Beale's doing that with QPR. I think he propped him up for a bit as well. So, yeah, it's all unravelled, and hopefully now the owners, Villa, have fixed it with Unai Emery.
It's interesting because, as I mentioned on yesterday's episode on the match preview, I really did consider Newcastle and Aston Villa to probably be on the same level. I thought when we get to the end of the season, it'd be those two teams would be pretty close in the league. You know, have that ambition of breaking into that top 7 or 8 and maybe just falling short. But the difference in where Newcastle are, as you say, 4th in the league, and where Villa are 15th, and the way their seasons have gone off in total different directions, has it caught you by surprise?
Yeah, 100%. But I mean, I was at St James's Park last season, and just the atmosphere there now, it's pumping up there, it's rocking up there, and the fans are bought into it. The city's behind the club. Eddie Howe's doing a fantastic job. Recruitment's been good. Disappointed about Isaac, obviously with his injury, but everything, yeah, it's a happy place up there, and it reminds me of the Keegan era. It really does with what's happening. So I'm sure the Toon fans are getting carried away, and rightly so. They're enjoying it at the moment, and they've been suffering for too long. And yeah, I mean, it's a big concern for Villa now, who Villa fancy themselves to upset the established order. The owners down at Villa spent £400 million with this squad over previous windows, and they're not where they should be at the moment. So they want to get back into Europe, and they're competing with Newcastle now, and it's going to be tough for a lot of clubs to compete with Newcastle. So, difficult. Yeah, and I'm pleased for Newcastle though.
Yeah, it's going really well, and the atmosphere at St James's Park is unbelievable. It's becoming a fortress, and it's going to be really interesting to see if that new manager bounce, for want of a better phrase, continues with Villa going into Saturday. But off the pitch, you mentioned there the money Villa have spent, and obviously they had ambitions of upsetting the established order at the top of the Premier League. It hasn't quite gone to plan. Do you think they look at what's happened at Newcastle in such a short space of time, the recruitment, and how Eddie Howe has hit the ground running? Of course, we cover that by saying it could and it will likely fall off at some point, and Newcastle maybe finish, 9th or 10th, but at the moment it is going very well. Do you think they look at what's happening here on Tyneside with a bit of envy, or it's maybe acted as a bit of a wake-up call, especially in terms of the manager that then gone to a point in terms of Unai Emery?
Yeah, it's a big worry for a lot of clubs, as I mentioned. Newcastle's form, the mood up there, people behind the scenes at Newcastle now, everything's right. And yeah, I mean, Villa want to leapfrog above Newcastle, and they want to be above them, and they're going to struggle. They're really going to struggle. And yeah, like you say, Eddie Howe's doing a great job, and it's difficult for most clubs now to compete with Newcastle. And yeah, they've got to live with that. And even your Manchester United now, they've got to look behind the shoulders, because Newcastle are coming pretty strong, and it's going to continue. There'll be no sign that the spending is going to be cut. So yeah, exciting times for your supporters, Andrew, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And just last word on Gerrard. A lot of pundits, especially from down south, when the two names, Eddie Howe and Steven Gerrard, were appointed to the jobs, quite a few of them said Newcastle should have gone after Gerrard. He's the bigger name. He'll be able to attract better players because of the reputation he's got. Obviously, hasn't worked out for Gerrard. It's worked out quite nicely for Howe. But what went wrong? Because he came into this role with his reputation rather high, and it's ended rather badly for him.
Yeah, when he stormed into Villa Park, he won 4 out of the first 6, and the only 2 he lost in that time was Man City and Liverpool by a 1-goal margin, and he really transformed it, Gerrard, and yeah, he really took Villa by the scruff of the neck and dragged them up for a little bit. The wheels fell off towards the end of last season, but like I say, his recruitment was pretty good. He changed the recruitment side of things. He wanted older players, more experienced players. To get Coutinho when they did Villa was incredible, really. They went out there and got Luca Dean. We'll have him off, 26 million. And they was acting like a big club, and you think, okay, we're on to something here, but it just all fell apart. I mean, results weren't good enough at all. The system Gerrard was playing and insisting on just wasn't suiting the personnel Villa had and given their recruitment strategy before. So it all derailed after Michael Beale left for me. Michael Beale, top of the league with QPR at the moment. Highly sought after coach. He rejected Wolves last week. He was propping Gerrard up for me. But yeah, Gerrard met him. I mean, I worked with him for a while. Great bloke. Give you all his time. Desperate for it to succeed. But just didn't have the minerals in the end. And players turned. The dressing room wasn't a happy one. He fell out with a lot of players. It's going to end one way, isn't it? And it ended in pretty incredible fashion down at Fulham. Player sent off, conceding the penalty and own goal. It all unravelled, and the owners had enough. The owners were at Craven Cottage at night, and they pulled the plug. 11:15, the statement dropped. No messing around there. No sentiments. He sacked. Yeah, we want better. So, and for them to act 3 days later to get Unai Emery in 3 days, the Champions League semi-finalist back in May, to get a club who was just hovering above the relegation zone in 3 days. That shows you the level of ambition Villa have got. So, yeah, we want to chase your coattails, Andrew. We want to be right next to you.
It's a big statement to get Unai Emery. When Newcastle were initially after him, I think a lot of fans couldn't quite believe that he is. When it came down, it was he was the first choice, and obviously it didn't happen. And Eddie Howe's come in and improved any of the doubters wrong. You mentioned there Coutinho. When he came to Aston Villa, he came around the same time that Bruno Guimaraes came to Newcastle, and we up here on Tyneside all buzzing about our Brazilian midfielder, and everyone down in the Midlands, or at least Villa Park, really happy with the signing of Coutinho. What's happened there? He didn't feature, if I'm correct, against Brentford. Is there going to be a chance for him to reclaim his spot, or is this going to be, well, he's one of Gerrard's signings and he's probably going to be shoved off in January, maybe?
Yeah, I think I remember seeing Newcastle being linked with Coutinho when he became available. So it's funny how it all worked out. Yeah, I mean, when he first came in, he took it by storm. We were seeing the Liverpool Coutinho here. He was fantastic. I mean, goals, assists, everything. He was dominating. And then just lost his way, lost a bit of form, lost confidence, took a massive confidence hit, and looks a shadow of the player now. Really does. Looks really leggy. Struggling to see a future for him, I am, Andrew. I really am. He's only 30 still. Been around the block a long, long time. Has that taken its toll? Possibly. Yeah, I mean, I think Carragher now the other week on Monday Night Football, he's a five-a-side player. He's not quick. He can't get around the pitch too much. He wants it into feet, and the Premier League, we'll eat you up and we'll swallow you up if you're going to do that. So, yeah, the one who's ahead of him at the moment, Amy Buendia, Villa's club record signing, nearly £40 million we pay for him. He's much more dogged. He will run for you. He'll steam into challenges for you. He can do the pretty stuff as well. So, I'm struggling to see a way back for Coutinho. Hopefully I'm proven wrong because he's a great player there, as we all know. We're down to Emery to get the best out of him now. Otherwise, I could see an exit in January, perhaps. Maybe one of them retirement clubs in MLS or something. I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, 17 million could be paid for him in the summer. You're thinking at the time, no brainer, they're pretty decent. But I think he's one of the top earners at the club. And if he's not playing, I think Emery plays a pressing style and players that work really hard. I don't think Coutinho is that kind of player. So it wouldn't surprise me if we see him off in January.
Is that a kind of a nod to maybe one of the issues with the recruitment of Villa, Pop? Because they've gone out and signed someone who, looking from the outside in, you could say, is a player who may think he's bigger than the club. We see the issues at Manchester United potentially with Ronaldo, someone who's got this kind of ego maybe, and they've got this reputation and all this baggage that comes with a player. How would you rate that recruitment? Is that someone that was signed on the back of Gerrard, recommending him, and maybe his ego has got the better of him, or is that a little unfair on Coutinho?
Yeah, he's not an ego kind of player. I think he's just his confidence at the moment. He's not happy, and the man that signed him, the man that put a lot of faith in him, he really dropped him as well. To be honest, kept playing him, kept thinking Phil would come good. He's out the door now, so yeah, it's just confidence with him. Coutinho, he's not one of these big time Charlies at all. He's just playing within his shell at the moment, and he's not getting much of a look in. So, but I've been impressed with Newcastle recruitment. I really have, Andrew. You haven't gone berserk. Okay, the Alexander Isaac was big money, but strikers do cost that, don't they? But you've been clever with your recruitment. Even your Popes, your Matt Targets, your Musk was a good deal, 15 million quid. So, I mean, how much aside does Eddie Howe have with recruitment?
I think he has quite a lot of say in it. He likes to make sure that these players who are coming in have the right character. They have to buy into everything that he wants on and off the pitch. And we kind of saw that against Spurs with the subs that came on. Jacob Murphy, for example, comes off the bench and just slips straight in to the team, and it just starts chasing down Spurs as the player that he replaced did. And that's what it's all about, having this kind of seamless transition from the bench to the pitch. And, when you start, you listen to the instruction and you know exactly what you've got to do, because I think Newcastle, before the takeover, were guilty of maybe splashing out on players who thought they were better than the club. Maybe not in the latter years of Mike Ashley, but certainly, in the middle part of his reign, it was always sold as a stepping stone. You come to Newcastle, do well for a couple of seasons, and then you'll get your big move somewhere. It's just not the case now, and that's another thing Eddie Howe wants players to buy into, that you're not coming here with a view to getting a move to a bigger club, because Newcastle United is going to be that big club. You're not going to want to go anywhere else. So I think Eddie Howe has a massive say in the players that come through the door, because at the end of the day, he's so meticulous in everything he does, and every player that comes in has to tick a lot of boxes to get his approval. And so far, it's worked wonders. You look at Kieran Trippier, Chris Wood, all got the. I mean, Kieran Trippier is, for me, probably the best right back at the moment in the Premier League in terms of an Englishman. Chris Wood, okay, he's not going to score you too many goals, but his character and his commitment is exactly what he is looking for. And it's just and all that adds to a nice united dressing room. And, players that aren't even getting on the pitch are still smiling after the final whistle goes. You saw it against Spurs with Ryan Fraser. He looked like he played 90 minutes, and he comes off at full time off the bench and is absolutely buzzing. So it's a nice united dressing room. What about down at Villa? Was the issue with Gerrard, or was the fractions within the dressing room? Has Emery got a bit to do within the dressing room, or was everyone kind of on the same page, and it was mainly at the door of Steven Gerrard?
Yeah, you look at last week, the 4-0, the celebrations there against Brentford, the relief on people's faces. They were playing with freedom. It did point to Gerrard's door. It really did. Start of the season as well. I think it was a few days before the opener against Bournemouth. Villa made the announcements. Gerrard stripped Tyrone Mings of the captaincy. I'm going to give it McGinn. McGinn's my man. And that didn't go down so well in the Villa dressing room, given Mings' popularity. immediately you're on the back foot. Players are thinking, "Ooh, I don't like that. It's a bit harsh on Ty." So some decisions like that, some of the comments as well, which taken out of context. I think he went on after the Bournemouth game. Tyrone needs to look me in the eye and say he's ready to play, that kind of stuff. But Gerrard, yeah, he was too honest at times, probably too honest with his players at times, and told them home truths, and players don't respond well to criticism. The majority don't anyway. So I think, yeah, about his management style, roughed up a few up the wrong way. He cast a few aside. Marvelous Nakamba, Zimbabwean midfielder. He was the star player under Gerrard early on. Picked up an injury, come back, never seen him again. Strange. Morgan Sanson, £15 million signing from Marseille. Looked decent in pre-season. I was over there, didn't get a look in at all. He was cast aside as well. So Gerrard had his favourites. Coutinho won, McGinn kept playing them, and yeah, the dressing room was pretty cut down the middle. There was cliques in there, I'm guessing, but I think they're united now. But yeah, totally polar opposite to Newcastle. I see the photos in the dressing room afterwards. Even the subs who didn't get on, they're parts of it. And Eddie Howe deserves praise for all that and this coaching setup. And yeah, united. That's what you want. That'll take you places.
Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting actually. Over the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of talk from pundits who tend to be living in the capital about all the money Newcastle United have spent. And yes, they've spent quite a bit. But with the Gerrard sacking, it's acted in Newcastle's favour in a way, because Villa, as you mentioned, have spent a lot of money over recent years. But what it's done is it's Villa can now be held up and said, well, actually, we're there. You can have a lot of money. You can be backed by your board and you can spend that money. But unless you've got the right manager in place to get all these players working together, to implement the style, to implement the work ethic, having all that money doesn't guarantee success. So in a way, Gerrard's bad luck and his sacking it has probably acted as a fine example to why I think some of the comments made by pundits towards Newcastle United and why they've been successful so far are a little bit disrespectful to Eddie Howe. Yeah,
it's all got to align, hasn't it? I think the Newcastle hierarchy are all aligned with Eddie Howe, the sporting director, and people like that, and the coaching staff. They're all as one. Whereas at Villa, it was Christian Perslow sounded out his man. He knows Gerrard well. He wanted the big name, the sexy name. Got Gerrard down from Rangers and his coaching setup. And yeah, there's speculation Gerrard didn't get on with the Johan Langer, our sporting director, which is quite evident now looking back at Gerrard's comments just last week. He asked about the data kind of things, because Villa have been outran by all of their opposition this season. And Gerrard, well, he's not a data man at all. He doesn't like data or stats or nothing like that. Whereas Johan Langer, he's massive on data, and he has a lot to say with the recruitment side of things, and that. So there's disparity between the manager and those above him.
And I mean, that's got to be a key relationship, hasn't it? Those above him, above a manager, and the manager, they have to get on, and that's one place Newcastle United have done so well, because Dan Ashworth has had a relationship with Eddie Howe prior to that. So he didn't come in not knowing Eddie Howe, and I think that's worked really well. And I think there's just a massive, the working relationship between all levels of the club. Everyone is definitely on the same page, and it's paying dividend, definitely. The win against Brentford, Ashley, a great win, 4-0. You say they're playing with freedom, but how much of that performance and that result is the real Aston Villa, and how much was that just maybe ripping off that plaster and feeling that relief that you mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Danks, who will be in charge of this weekend, the interim head coach, he had two days, I think, to prepare for that one. And he dropped McGinn, dropped the captain, made some bold calls, dropped Jacob Ramsey, who's highly thought of, and he played the new system. Villa fans have been crying out for it to play a 4-2-3-1. It suits Villa's personnel down to the ground. Whereas Gerrard insisted having Watkins as a central striker, and Watkins has struggled in front of goal all season. So what Danks did, he ripped up Gerrard's manual. He went with his own system, 4-2-3-1, played 2 sixes as the pivots, and then he let the four up front, Leon Bailey, Ollie Watkins, Emi Buendia, and Danny Ings run riot. And that's what they did in that first 14 minutes. Blitzed Brentford. Yeah, I mean, Villa couldn't score a goal for love nor money under Gerrard. Struggled to score. The system was all wrong, and And yeah, as we witnessed last week, Villa's expensively assembled attacking line just ran riot, and it seems the way to go. So I'm filled with confidence going up to St James's Park. Whereas if I didn't see that last week, I'd be petrified. So yeah, Villa got a lot in the locker. They really have. They spent a lot of money in that area of the pitch. Watkins was 30 million. Danny Ings was 30 million. Leon Bailey 30 million. Buendia 40 million. You know what I mean? These are a lot of money we spent on them. So you expect a return, and we've seen that return last week. Can they keep it up? We'll see. Against the good Newcastle side, it'll be a big test for Villa.
Yeah, I think it certainly will be. Newcastle United and St James's Park becoming a bit of a fortress. I think Brentford are one of those teams that are a bit hot and cold on their
Funny
day.
Team, yeah.
They are superb, and of course Thomas Frank was a name linked to that Villa job. But then they can also have terrible days like they did at St James's Park, actually, where they were ripped apart. But an interesting stat I saw about Villa, they took 14 minutes to score as many goals on that day as they did under Steven Gerrard in 409 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, that is astonishing.
Yeah, it just shows you the attacking talent we got, and Aaron Danks unlocked it. Go on, and I think it's all down to Danks, really. We've got the personnel, we've got the players, but Gerrard's system just stifled it. So it says more about Gerrard than it does about Villa's squad for me.
They've got some great attacking names. You've mentioned it, a few of them. I'm a big fan of Danny Ings. I think he's a tremendous player. And you've got, the likes of like Ollie Watkins as well, who I think has done really well despite maybe the lack of goals. Do we expect the same approach from Villa as they had against Brentford? Are we expecting them to be as front foot against Newcastle?
Yeah, start quick. I think try and quiet the crowd down. I think it'll be unchanged. Andrew, Luca Dean's back, Frenchman's back, left back, but I think he'll stick with Ashley Young. Ashley Young's 37. He's been Villa's best player all season, and yeah, it's just incredible, really, how he's still going, doing fantastically at left back. So I think Villa will go unchanged. It'll be Martinez in goal, Cash, Konsa, Mings, Ashley Young. The two in front of the back four, then Donka and Douglas Luiz, both played well last week. And then the attacking four will be Watkins on the right, Bailey on the left, and Buendia behind Danny Ings. So I think be unchanged. I'm going to ask you, Andrew, Matt Targett was not playing of late, out of favour from a Villa angle?
So he started the season really well. I've been really impressed with him, but he picked up a dead leg and missed quite a few games. And Dan Burns come in, and he doesn't look like a left back because he's a giant of a man, and someone that tall isn't usually left back, but he's done really, really well. There's been a couple of games where he's been totally done for pace. I mean, even though Newcastle won against Brentford comfortably, I felt Dan Burn was probably the weak link. He was exposed a few times against Manchester United. Newcastle picked up a point. Again, though, he was exposed. But to be fair to him, to give credit to him, against Everton and in the last game against Spurs, he's gone back to that consistent level. And although, again, he was against some really good players out on the wide, he didn't really look troubled. That said, I think if one of your wide men can get at him and really run at him, they will get the better of him. He's a very good defender, and he deserves his place in that side. And Eddie Howe doesn't change a winning side often. So that is the reason why Dan Burn remains in that side, despite probably, and our listeners will probably say I'm being a little bit unfair, but he is, in my opinion, the weak link. But that aside, like I say, doesn't change your winning side, and he likes that momentum, Eddie Howe. So that's why he's keeping Targett out of the side. But a very good sign, I think, Matt Targett. It's refreshing to have an option like him off the bench to come on. You can play either flank. It's just nice to have a very decent quality left back there to use. Dan Burn will inevitably have to have a rest or maybe get injured at some point. So to know you've got someone who can come in and do an equally good job, that's music to Newcastle United fans' ears, because it's been a long, long time since they've had a left back of decent quality like Matt Targett. But it's going to be interesting. Who will Dan Burn have to keep quiet, do you think?
It'd be Ollie Watkins. Ollie Watkins would be at the right wing, so very quick, very physical as well. That'd be a good battle, that will. One to watch at the weekend. Burn against Watkins, yeah.
Definitely. And what about the man keeping Callum Wilson quiet? Who's going to have that responsibility?
He's old mate from Tyrone Mings and Edward Konsa. So every time Villa played against Wilson, he's always been a handful. Very aggressive. I really like him. I do, Andrew. I think he rejected Villa, didn't he, when he went to St James after his son said, "I want to watch goal. I want to go." Sent him to Newcastle. I remember that interview well. Yeah, Villa missed out on him. A really good player. I like him a lot. Packs a punch for his size as well. Great finisher. So yeah, and the player in form at the moment. So yeah. Mings and Conte against Wilson doesn't fill me with too much optimism from a Villa
That was
angle.
going to be my question, yeah, because how has Mings been over recent games? I mean, our listeners won't be watching Villa week in, week out. Just give a bit of an insight, because again, looking from the outside in, you watch Match of the Day, but it's a very limited coverage. To me, Tyrone Mings hasn't had the best of seasons and does look a bit vulnerable. But again, as I say, that's me looking from the outside in.
Before a fortnight ago, he was one of Villa's best players. He really was. He really stood up to the task. He came back from having the armband taken off him really well, and he was probably one of Villa's best players, most consistent back then. But made some bad mistakes against Chelsea, and passed it straight to Mason Mount against Fulham, the own goal. So the mistakes are starting to creep in again from Tyrone, which can happen from time to time with his game. So he needs to be on his mettle. Otherwise, Newcastle are making pay. Wilson especially. Love the way he took his goal last week in Tottenham. Not easy to do that at all. And player in form. So yeah, Mings got it all to do this weekend.
It's going to be interesting to see if where Gareth Southgate is this weekend, because he could be up at St James's Park to see quite a host of potential World Cup call-ups, because Tyrone Mings, I've seen people calling for Dan Burn. Unfortunately, I don't think he's going to be in with a chance. But Callum Wilson, another one, Ollie Watkins. There's a lot for him to potentially see if he decides to make his way up to Tyneside this Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, you could be in worse places than that. Yeah, for sure. Newcastle as well. Yeah, Trippier, keep an eye on him. Wilson, Dan Burn's the one. Yeah, a lot of talk about him. Might be a potential wild card. A few games to show what he can do now as well. Good profile, Dan Burn. Good size. Very, very versatile, as you mentioned as well. So, Villa's perspective, I'm not really holding any hopes on any Villa player getting into the lineup. So, tough one from Villa.
In terms of handling Newcastle's approach, we've seen this season them really have this pressing game where they do not give the opposition a moment on the ball, especially the backline and goalkeeper. We saw against Spurs that they're also trying to take control of the game more. How will Villa handle, first of all, that pressing style of Newcastle?
Well, they've got to, haven't they, really? It'll be tough for them. The crowd will be right on them from the word go. They'll be pumped up there again. They have all the war flags out, won't you, again? Really like that. And the tunes playing. So, yeah, I think Newcastle will come at them pretty quickly. Villa have got to settle down and just try and quiet the crowd down and take the sting out of the game, make it a bit ugly. Otherwise, it could be 2-3 before you know it. So, yeah, the crowd will play a big part this weekend. Look, Bruno's a big player for you, isn't he? In there, he's really performing well. That midfield battle could be something. Will it be Longstaff, Willock, and Bruno?
I think so. I think just on the basis of them not changing a winning side, Shelby featured for the first time in quite a while against Spurs. Had about 8 or 9 minutes, and he looked fine. But he's working back to match fitness. You've got Joe Linton, who's for me been Newcastle's best player this season, but he was up on the left-hand side as opposed to where he's usually played in that kind of midfield three. But they beat Spurs, who are going for the title. So if everyone's fit, why would you change your winning side? I don't think he'll make any changes unless he's forced into it. So yeah, I think it'll be Bruno, Willock, and Longstaff. And what I'm wanting to see is just to see Joe Willock and Sean Longstaff step up a little bit. And I think the fact they know Shelby is a big favourite of Eddie Howe. They know Joe Linton is consistently at a very good level. I'm hoping that'll act as the motivation on Saturday to see them step up, because they're going to need to. And I do also feel, I know Aston Villa beat Brentford, but I do feel there's a real opportunity here for Newcastle to cement their place in the top four and to pick up another win at St James's Park, because only one team this year have come up here and beat Newcastle, and that was Liverpool back in April. So it is an absolute fortress, And I think there's a real good opportunity for Newcastle to get all 3 points this Saturday.
Yeah, Miguel Almiron's been the one for me. Andrew Almiron, incredible. Looks a real player now as well. And the goal last week was no one really talked about it really. If Messi scored that last week the way he did and cut inside and finished, having a wonderful season. So big money at the time. Was it 20 odd million for him? You're thinking not quite seeing it. We've seen the Grealish remarks last summer as well, out of order. And look what he's doing now. So yeah, Miggy's having a great season for you.
Yeah, 100%. And everyone's focused on those Grealish remarks. But actually, I think that's a little bit unfair on Miggy and Eddie Howe, because yes, I don't think there's any doubt they would have played a small part in this turnaround for Miggy, but it's down to his hard work and down to Eddie Howe just finding the thing that's unlocked them. Because listeners to our podcast will know I am the biggest Almiron fan out there, and I've always had this faith in him, sometimes blind faith that he will become good, and I'm happy to be proved right now. But what I never for a moment thought, he scored 5 in his last 5. He's been absolutely superb. And again, you mentioned that goal on Sunday. Most players go down after that initial contact from I think it was Emerson, wasn't it? He just continues. He's got one aim in mind, and he puts it away. Absolutely superb. And yeah, he is a man really right in the way of confidence, and he's going to be so. It's going to be so difficult for Villa to keep him quiet, because he's got defenses fear now. I think last year you knew what you were doing with him. You put him as close to the touchline as you could get him, because he's got his head down. He's not really looking what he's doing. Whereas now he's got his head up. He's picking a pass. He's not really thinking about it either. That's the key. He's not taking that extra touch. Been absolutely fantastic, and I'm going to back him to get a goal actually against Villa on Saturday.
He's good.
I'm backing him. What about the key man for Villa? Who's the key man Newcastle have to keep quiet?
Key man for Villa, I'm going to go Emi Buendia. Look right at home last week against Brentford. Plays in the hole in the number 10 position, so he'll need marshalling. So I don't know who's going to drop in there to keep an eye on him. He has more freedom now, Buendia. He's the link between the midfield and the attack. So you've got to keep an eye on him. So whether you guys, I don't know who's disciplined enough for you. Will it be Bruno sitting in of the three?
Yeah, I think it will. It will be Bruno sitting in. But the good thing about the way Newcastle set up is that when people advance, straight away there's someone there to cover. And I think it sounds like a basic thing to say, but it wasn't always the case. Players weren't covering, and there was always gaps. So I think initially it'll be Bruno sitting in that midfield, just trying to pull the strings. But it could be one of anyone. And to be fair, Joe Linton, if you watched the game against Spurs, he may have been up there on the left, but the amount of times he was back in between that section you described there, getting a foot stuck in, was unbelievable. Like, what an engine on that guy. And he'll no doubt be getting his foot stuck in on the attacking players, because he's shown he can do that wherever he plays. So that's going to be an interesting battle to see. To see who Joe Linton rattles. It's always an interesting one to see who gets a foot stuck in on. What about the main weakness for Villa? What can Newcastle take advantage of?
A Tyrone mistake, maybe. we've spoken about it. Yeah, the Ricks can creep into Mings' game, obviously, and as Hugo Lloris testified last week, Wilson's onto you if you slip up, and yeah, that's the one for me. Wilson's sharpshooter, and if you get to sniff of anything, he tends to finish it off. So Villa need to be immaculate at the back.
Do they pass it around at the back, or did the keeper just bang it up the field? How do they play? Do they play out from the back?
They used to, under Gerrard, but last week it was much more direct. So yeah, they played through the midfield. Last week was quite good to see. They had more bodies in there, obviously, with Dendoncker and Douglas Luiz, good ball player, Douglas Luiz, and Buendia was in there as well. So it was much more better last week, front to back, and playing through the thirds, as opposed to Gerrard. It was get it to the fullbacks and pump it long, and the centre halves will play around a bit too much, and it's very slow build up. So yeah, looking much better now off the back of last week, and yeah, long may continue.
Well, that's bad news for Newcastle fans then, because if it had been the old system, I think that the pressing would have been been quite interesting to see. Will Unai Emery have any influence on Saturday at all? I know he doesn't officially start till the 1st, isn't it? But will he have any influence at all, do you think?
Be interesting. I don't know, Andrew. Be interesting to know, really. He starts work on Tuesday. Whether he's been in touch with Aaron Danks prior to that, I'm not sure. Would have been quite interesting if he was in the stands, wouldn't it? Newcastle would be quite interesting. Little side notes, given he turned them down. But yeah, I'm sure he's been in touch with the club.
A bit like Bullseye, wouldn't it, when he wheels on the speedboat? This is what you could have won.
Yeah, I know. But the players are in for a massive wake-up call back at Bodymore, Villa's training ground. Massive culture change there now. Unai Emery's up there with Pep Guardiola in terms of detail, video analysis. They've got nothing coming, this Villa group. So, fascinating times at Villa. And, Unai Emery's client army now.
Is it a bit of a weird game in that sense that you have a new manager appointed, yet he's not going to be in charge for this game? Villa a little bit in limbo, or is it a little bit of a free hit for Villa? I don't know. How do you think they're going to approach it?
I think it's that the players can showcase. The manager will be watching the game for sure. They want to impress him, so I think it could work in Villa's favour. You know, Emery will be breathing down the neck almost. They'll feel that new manager's watching them. They want to impress. We've got Man U double header. We've got Man U twice back to back next week. They want to be playing in them big games as well. So yeah, it could work in Villa's favour. That they know Unai will be watching them, and yeah, I think they'll have to be on it. Otherwise, they'll be out the team, and that's it then. So we'll see. But I think it could work in Villa's favour.
There we have it then. So what is the score going to be?
I'll snap your hand off for a point, Andrew. I'll take a point and go home. That'd be perfect for me. I'll go 1-1.
1-1. Well, I'm going to go 3-0 to Newcastle. I'm feeling confident.
Don't go to your head.
Cement position in the top four. I am. I'm just feeling confident, and they're just playing so well at home. They're playing so well in general. They're really strong at the back as well, and they're clinical. That's one of the key differences. They're just clinical when they get these chances, and I think it'll be a good game, especially for Newcastle. So I'm going to go 3-0, and 3 points for Newcastle United.
European football next year?
Well, I don't want to get ahead.
Here we go. See, backtracking now.
No, do you know? I said initially I'd take a 10th or 11th place finish in a cup run trip to Wembley. Obviously, it's gone so well, better than anyone had ever expected. I think January is probably the key. I think January, see what they do in January. If they're still in the hunt for potentially European football, then January is probably going to make the difference. You know, it's very easy to say that, point out the obvious, isn't it? But yeah, I think anything, within the top 7, top 8 is more than anyone would have taken at the start of the season. So it's certainly going to be interesting. But I do think this is a really good chance for Newcastle to get an extra 3 points on the board and make sure they head in that World Cup break in a few weeks' time in a really good and strong position. So it's going to be an interesting game. And as I said, 3 points for Newcastle is what I'm backing. So fingers crossed. Safe journey up to Tyneside for you, Ashley. And to you guys listening, please remember to like and follow the podcast through your podcast provider. To you guys listening on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and head over to chroniclelive.co.uk to keep up to date with all the latest Newcastle United news. Thanks to Ash for popping on to the podcast, and thank you guys for tuning in.